Alright, so this video is going to be about how to build a dashboard for different types of student data. The idea is that all of these types of data, whether it's demerits, missing assignments, grades by class, GPA, could all be pulled from a student information system like Skyward or Infinite Campus or JMC or something like that. And at the start of the week, you just run a report and then copy that data into our spreadsheets here. You can see that the demerits has per week. We can see missing assignments is per week. GPA is just going to be a number. And then all of that data is pulled over onto a dashboard where we can select our student. And we can not only see what their grade is in every class at that point in time, but we can also see some of the other data that might lead into a conversation we're having about the grades by class, whether it's demerits or missing assignments. We can see that for whatever reason, the student had a really rough time on week 8. And maybe that's something that we have a conversation about. So whenever we're talking with parents or other teachers or even the students themselves, it can be really nice to have this data in front of us so that we're not just talking about a D. Right? We're talking about a D and some of the things that might have gone into that D. And it can just give us a better idea of what's actually going on. So we've got our dashboard here. We've got all of the other sheets that could be pulling data in to it. And I'm going to clear this out, and then we're going to go through how to build a dashboard like this one. So the first thing that I want to do when I'm getting this set up is I want to set up the sheets for my raw data to go into. So this is going to be data that comes right from a report off of our student information system, and it really depends on what your information system looks like and what types of reports are being run on how this is going to look. So let's go with the last example said demerits. I'm going to use discipline incidents. I'm going to track my GPA. I'm also going to track missing assignments. Let's say I want to have comments for teachers to be able to put those in, and I want to have grades. Sure. So I have a place for all of my data in here. And then the idea is that I would go run a report on, say, a Monday or a Friday or however I wanted to run that. And then I would copy this data and have this sheet set up in a way where it was really easy to copy this data over. So for example, here's what the incident referral grid looks like. I took a lot of columns off of this. We would have, student name, then we would have grade, then we would have a bunch of other columns information, and one of those columns is the incident count here. And so what I'm looking for is not to draw on my my graph here. What I want to do is to be able to just click on something. There we go. Oops. So what I want to be able to do is just take this, and at the start of the week, like I said, make this really simple. Go in here, copy and paste it so that I don't have to change that information. And so this might be maybe I would put in another row here, and I would go week 1, and then the next week I would go through, type week 2, and then I would go back to my thing here, and I would rerun this report, and my incident count would be different at that point. Then I would go and I would copy this and paste it into the week 2, and so I wouldn't have to keep typing all this data in. I could just make it really nice and slick, and that would feed into my dashboard. But that's the idea behind these raw sheets. It's really going to depend on what it looks like for your students and for your report systems. So I'm going to just copy these over. Oops. Let's copy that whole thing here because I want my there. And missing assignments might be one where I have the week by week. So I'm actually going to take this from my old sheet because I don't think it really matters whether or not, now that we get the idea of what this is going to look like and how it's getting into there, what the data is as we build out the rest of this. So I'm just going to add this in. Let's go GPA. And I've got some blanks here. We'll leave it that way. Grades. Again, this could take a little bit of customization depending on what you're doing, but we're getting it. And comments, not a whole lot in this part. There. So now my comments have a place where teachers can type in what they want. I've got all of the grades, and again, this would get run off of a report. We've got our missing assignments across all of the weeks. We've got the GPA, and we've got discipline incidents. And let's take the demerits from our last one. Put that in right there. That should work. Let's make this week 2, week 3, and week 4. So however this looks for you, I'm probably not going to be able to have a ton of data on this dashboard while still being able to see everything. But we want to get to the point where we have all of our data into its own individual sheets. If you were in a situation where GPA and grades were run on the same report and they were right next to each other and it was super easy to come over and grab all of that data, you could definitely do it that way and keep them all on the same sheet and then account for that in the query that we write while we're building our dashboard. One other thing to make sure that we have correct here is that you want all of your student names to be the exact same, or as exact as you can make them. So I had all of these are obviously super simple because it's student 1, student 2, 3, and so on. But if I have something like student 1 and then there's a period after that, we can make that work if in one of the lists there's periods. If you have something in the list where maybe there's a middle name or student 1 the third there, that's going to make things difficult if it's not in the other one. So you're going to want to go through and clean up your data however you need to make sure that your student names are the same in all of the parts of your report. That's a huge part of this as we go through and run our queries. But once you get that set up, we should be ready to go for building this dashboard. So that's what we're going to get into in the next section here. And then once I get into building this dashboard, I'll start off by making the sheet for my dashboard. And just like most dashboards, we're going to start off with validating the student's name so that we're making sure we know which names are getting put into here. Now, an issue that could come up with this is if I take and I validate the student names based off of what's in the discipline incidents sheet, not all of the students that I want might be in there. For example, if a kid doesn't have a discipline incident, they might not show up in this report. Hopefully everybody would be in the GPA or the missing, hopefully not the missing assignments, but the grades report, because everybody should have grades in their classes. But what we might want to do is you have a couple options here to make sure that you're getting all the students that you're going to want to see in here. Either you could pick the sheet that has the most students on it, something like grades, if you feel pretty comfortable that all of your students are on that list. You could go and you could validate the entire student list off of that one. The other option is to go through and give yourself the best chance of catching all of your kids. And let's see where I put my extra sheet. And I'm going to put total student list, and I could use this formula called unique, and it's going to look for all of the unique instances of student names across these sheets. I just have to plug these in. So I'm going to put in my comments, all of my student lists for comments, and again I'm going to get rid of that last number so that it goes all the way down the column. And then I'm going to use a semicolon that says I still want to take more data here. Notice there's a curly bracket in front of my comments. That's going to say that all of these things that I'm adding, all of these ranges, we want to use all of them for our unique. And unique is just going to look for, if student 1 shows up on one of my lists, it's going to put it into my total student list. If student 1 shows up on another list, it's not going to put student 1 on that list. It'll take all of the unique instances of student names and put it on the list. Now I want to go down to my missing assignments, and I'm going to do the same thing. Go down to A, semicolon, go to GPA here, and then I'd finally go to my discipline incidents. Get rid of right there. And then I want to end up with a curly bracket, and then there's really nothing else I have to do for my unique function. It's just going to take all the unique instances. So mine is really simple because they are all the exact same list. I copy and pasted them over, but we can check this by putting a name down there and then now Justin shows up on that list. And if I put Justin on this other list, Justin should only show up once, and if I put Isaac, it should take the student name from there. So that's a way to use the unique to make sure that I'm taking all of the possible students that are showing up on my list and then validate based off of this total student list. So that's what I'm going to do on my dashboard. So I'm going to go to my data validation, list from a range, and I'm going to enter the range or formula of this total student list. And just like normal, I'm going to go all the way down that. So as this list grows, I will keep taking more students from it. So there's no number behind that A. I want to show the drop down in the cell, and I just want to click save. So I should see all of my students in here, right? And as I click these, I can search for them and pick a student out. So now I am choosing what student name values are going to be going into these queries that I'm going to run. I'm not going to get too wrapped up in formatting here, but there's my student name section of this. So now what I want to do is I want to build the actual dashboard part where we're pulling data into this dashboard. So I'm going to pull GPA first, and I'm going to be using a vlookup in this section. So this is going to be a vlookup where I want to search through my GPA. I want to search down this list for whatever student is selected, and I want to pull the GPA that shows up here. Okay, so I want to have my vlookup. If I look at the question mark here, getting myself some help for this, my search key comes first, and the search key is what I want to look for. So I want to find A2. The second part of my function is the range that I want to do the search for, and I have to include where I want to pull data from. So I want to search from my A column across my B column because that's the data I want to pull. And so I'm going to get rid of the number right after my B here. So I'm going from A3, the top of my student list in the GPA sheet, over to B, and then all the way down so that as this list grows, I will keep searching for students in this A column. This doesn't matter too much because there's no students there to find. I'm going to click my comma. My next part is what is the index that I want to pull from. And so this is going to say, okay, if I find student number 5 here, which is what you wanted me to look for, which column do you want me to pull the value from? And so I want it to pull from this cell right here. And the way the index works is number 1, number 2. So this is index 2. As we find student 5, I want to pull the data that is directly next to that cell. So I want to put 2 here. And then the next question is, do we want to put true or false in here? Now, if you feel like your student names are going to be exact matches, then you should put false. Right? If you don't feel like your student names are going to be exact matches, where there might be something a little bit off for them, maybe in your main student list it doesn't have a period in there, and this one does have a period, or some other small little detail, then you could put true and it'll find the next closest value to whatever the student number is. If you try that, so if false doesn't work, whoops, did not find value Isaac. Oh, that's good because Isaac is not in that list. Let's look for this one. There we go. If you try some of these, if you try a VLOOKUP and you try false and it doesn't pick up on your student name because it's not an exact match, if you try true and it doesn't pick up on it because it's not an exact match and it's not close enough for it to figure out what student we're talking about, then you're going to have to go to a query. I'm not showing that in this one because we're going to be writing a lot of queries, and so I figured it'd be best just to show a VLOOKUP and how this could be used in that situation, but our VLOOKUP should work fine for this. Okay, so my student name and my GPA is hooked up, and if the student isn't in that list for having a GPA, it'll show up as an NA, which is perfectly fine. Now we're going to go to the comments section. Let's go. I'm going to write my query from right here. So when I look at my comments and what I want these headings to show up in my query above everything I return. So I want to go through and I want to return the comments that are showing up from this student. I want to have the headings of the class and then the comments that are there for them. So I'm going to go in this cell and use a query. And my query is going to go across all of this data from A all the way over to F. I'm going to get rid of the number behind F so that it goes all the way down. So as this list grows, we'll continue using it. This is going to be select. And since I don't want the student name to show up in my query, I just want the data from these columns, I'm going to go select column B, C, D, E, and F to get this data out. And now I'm going to put in a little bit of a clause here, where I want where this column, where column A, is equal to whatever student I have selected in my dashboard. So I'm going to wait to type that in. A is equal to, I'm going to just go cell here. It's going to be all screwed up. And then I'm going to put in comma here. And then the last part of my query is, what are the headers look like? So I want my headers to be, I want to have one row of headers because I want those to show up. So I'm going to put that one in there and we'll see how this shows up. So we might not get a whole lot because of this cell in there. The reason why I wanted that is because I want this, I want to be able to see what I'm putting in. So the way that I put in this cell range, I can't actually just put in A2. Normally I just write A2 for this. What I have to do is I have to put in 3 double quotes, then and 3 double quotes. And it should work in here. So student 5 doesn't have any comments. Let's just go check. And it does work. So this is good. Now the reason why this has to go in is 3 double quotes is that some student names might have a little apostrophe in them. This is going to make sure that our query still works. Now one other thing you might want to think about is having just contains in here, especially if your student lists are changing from sheet to sheet. Like I said before, if your main student list doesn't have middle names, but your comments list does have middle names included in student names, if you put the contains in here, it should still work for them. So this is what my query is going to look like for the comments section. Now we're just going to make this look halfway decent. Put a little box around it. And my comment section is working. Now we're going to do grades by class. It's going to be very, 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 very similar to that one. So I'm going to go here. Grades by class. I want the same thing. Equals query. I'm going to go to grades. I'm going to select across the student list from A to E because I want to search through all of this data. This is going to be select B, C, D, and E. Again, I don't want this student name to show up in my query, but I want to select these 4 columns. Where A, this is going to be the same as before, contains quote, 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 and A2, and quote, 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 to finish that up. And then I have my last little double quote to finish up my query, select, and then I'm going to have comma 1, click equals, and now I have all of my grades by class. So here's what I have right here, and then I can draw a little box around it. And so we can just check to see that this is still working. Perfect. Got GPAs, we've got grades. Okay, the last thing, or the next couple of things, is to get the discipline incidents and the missing assignments. Now this is one that we were using for my graph. So if you look at what I had before, I had these graphs and I actually had the numbers of the demerits for that student showing up in a query right here. And then we would use this data to formulate the graphs. And so we're going to build that, that demerits and the missing assignments part of our dashboard. All right, so let's go missing assignments first. I'm just going to make this a little bit bigger. And I want, again, a query. I want my missing assignments to go from students all the way across. And this depends on how many weeks you're going to have included. If we're just doing a whole quarter, we might be able to end this at week 9, which is what I'm going to do here. If you were going out farther, you could definitely take this as far as you wanted to. If you want to do an entire year, perfectly fine. So I'm going to go from A2 all the way up to J5. Get rid of my number after J so that it'll again grow and still be useful as this list grows. This time, because I don't want to have to type in all of these columns, now I could go B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, and then whatever columns you wanted to do. I don't really want to do that because I think it can get kind of cumbersome. So I'm just going to have in whatever query this pulls, I'm going to pull the student name to it. So instead of saying the column list, I can just put this star that says, I want all of the data from this sheet, where A contains quote, 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 A2 and quote, quote, quote. And then, yeah, we want the headings with that as well. Okay, so there's all of my data from there for that student. And we're just going to go, let's do this. We will, actually, here. If I know I'm just going to have this much data, I'm just going to put a box around it. I don't know why I like the boxes, I just do. Let's go. And this should change as more students get added to it, or as more data gets added to it. So I could, we'll show this in the discipline instance. So I'm going to go query here. I'm going to change this from up there to down there. So I'm pulling that data with me. Let's go, and let's say I wanted to do 9 weeks here, but I don't have that data yet. Let's go discipline incidents here. Same thing, select all of the data. So I don't have to choose my columns, where A contains quote, 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 and A2 and here. Okay, so that says incident count. We're just going to change this around. Okay. And so we should be able to see that this is going to be able to be adjusted as we add more students. So like going back to the reasoning for this is making it really easy to run a report and take from my data this incident count that I have, and at the start of the week not having to go through and type all of this in, but just going and copying this in. So I can go, why it always wants me to draw. So I can go and select these students, go here and go week 5, and there's my data collection for the week, and it shows up in my dashboard, and it will update our graphs as well when we select that student. So the idea is to make this very quick and easy to track data week by week and have it update our dashboard without a lot of manual entry. So this is going to work perfectly fine for us. And so in the next section, we've got our dashboard, we've got the numbers set up really well, but a nice visual. You can tell the difference between this dashboard that I have and this dashboard that I have. These graphs make a huge difference for visualizing change over time and what could be happening. And so we're going to go through how to build those graphs in the next section. All right, so last step to beautifying this dashboard, making it really useful, is to add in our graphs. So I'm actually going to, once I have the graphs, I won't care about this missing assignment and discipline incidents. It doesn't matter quite as much to have those numbers if you've got a graph showing that exact data. So I'm just going to add in some rows here, to make those numbers go out of the way. We're going to use them for our graphs, but then kind of ditch them. So I'm going to go up to insert, and I like to make my graphs from scratch. I know that you could probably take and highlight the data in my Google Sheet and then make a graph from it. I don't know, for whatever reason, I like to just make it. So I go up to setup, I go to column chart. I actually want a line chart because this is showing a change over time. So I'm going to go line chart. My x-axis here is going to be my week 1 through 9. Oops. Maybe I should take Google's word for it and just make the graphs. Let it make the graphs, but I just can't get myself to do it. There. Okay, so something's jacked up here. It's kind of what happens. So you can tell that this is a little bit messed up because I have all of my weeks are different points, different series, different lines, and my x-axis is all weird and funky. All I have to do this is to switch rows and columns, and it looks fine. So that's, I think it's because Google expects me to pick data that's going up, down, instead of all the way over this way. So that's how we do that. Select our data, go to switch rows and columns, and then now if I want to customize just to show what this data is, I go up to chart. This is missing assignments. And so this is going to show their missing assignments over time. Now we can check this. This is, let's go to this student number 1. Whoa, that doesn't work out, right? Oh, I know the issue here. So see where I said where A contains this. Now guess whose grades these all are. This is student 1, student 10, student 11, student 12, because all of those contain that student 1. So we're going to go up here and we're going to go where A equals there. Where A equals, see how that works, student 1 all the way through. So if your names are not like this, you should be okay to use contains, but I forgot that since I'm using student and then number, it will pick up on that. So all of my student 2 would have quite a few compadres that they'd be pulling grades for and everything like that, and student 1 is the same way. So we can check to see if this thing is working, and it will pull all of our students because it's based off of this changing missing assignment sheet. Now let's go and let's build our discipline. Now I'm gonna give this a shot after the mess that was last time. We're gonna go here, insert chart, and if I go to line chart, it does the same thing. So I just highlighted all of my data, go up to insert chart, switch to line chart, and then I must just have to go to switch rows and columns here. I think that looks pretty good. And let's go to customize. My chart title is going to be, what was this, discipline incidents? Discipline incidents. All right, there we go. I can make this smaller. Make it look all nice. Go right next to this one. Make them the same size even so that we look professional. There we go. So we've got our dashboard here, and maybe I want to make them a little bit higher so that that's not cut off. And as I change my student, I can see their grades, the comments, it still works. I can see their GPA, and then I can see their missing assignments, discipline incidents over time for each of these weeks. And let's check to see that our discipline incidents work. So student 8, I'm going to go and I'm going to add a new, let's see, week 6, and I'm going to give 5, 5, 5 for all of these. And so we should see, yep, week 6 gets added, and that's a 5. So this will work over time as you go into your reports and copy that information in these weeks. Now you can do pretty much whatever you want. If you want to make this look, a little bit more decent, like the other one, a little bit of color doesn't hurt anybody, as long as it's not too much color. And there we go. We have our dashboard. And so that is pretty much how you can build this dashboard. Now you can build it out with as many different little pieces as you want, but just know that you're kind of limited by how much you want to show. I personally feel like anything more than 5, and you probably need to pare down what you are tracking. Now, if you want to share this with teachers, maybe other people around the school, administrators, team members, interventionists, special education teachers, you might want to do a little bit of protecting, especially with the dashboard, because there's really nothing that anybody needs to change on here except for the student name. So the way that I can protect this is to right click on dashboard, click protect sheet, and then I can go accept certain cells. It's protecting this entire sheet of dashboard, and I can make the only cell, since it's selected, it just picked A2. So now anybody can change this A2 cell, which they're going to need to be able to look at the different students. I go to set permissions, and I can have either a restrict so that only I can edit it, or a couple other people if you wanted to add others to this. Or I can just have this so it shows a warning when editing this range. If for something like this, I would definitely suggest using the restrict, so only you, if you're going to maintain ownership of this copy so that people can change this part. You will still be able to change any of your dashboards like that. You could make copies of it where people can change it as much as they want. Just know that if there's 5 different people working off of this and they have it open at the same time and they're changing students, anybody else who is using the spreadsheet would also see that change. So it might be something where you're going to want to have people make a copy of it or make a copy yourself before you share it out, or just find a way to limit that. If somebody's got a team meeting, then just say who's using this, split it up between the different grades or whatever that looks like. So that is how you build a dashboard to show information from your student information system.